I'm going to close here, and we'll. I got to say, one of my very good friends in life is a man by the name of Doug Griffen. Doug, you've changed just a little bit since that picture on the left, but not much. Doug and I first met and worked together 25 years ago. He's been a partner with a strategic partner with Heart+Mind, and we do a lot of work together. And Doug, appreciate your patience as you've kind of pulled through. But what was occurring to me is that one of your strengths of the mini is being able to take stuff and assemble it and say, what does it mean and where do we go? And I know for the last couple of years, you checked off a big bucket list item of putting together a powerful book. I was honored and privileged to be able to help you with that in different pieces, as is Heart+Mind Strategies in a different way. Take us through, as we close out here, your thoughts, and I know we've got some visuals to do as well, as to what does this mean, not just next year, for the decade ahead, and kind of package it together in a way that you're really good at, almost better than anyone I've ever known.
Well, thank you very much. And again, happy holidays to everybody. And it's just an honor to have listened in to all of the thought leadership out there, just terrific topics. And it's so important for us to reflect going into 2022, all that's occurred in the last 2 years. And Maury, the project that we've been working on, the Foresight Project, has been a 2-year project to look at a series of different kinds of issues. And if you'll put up the PowerPoint there, I'd like to take through a couple of things here just to set the context for the Foresight Project and really what we've done here to kind of move forward. The book is called Foresight 2030 and kind of subtitled Conversations About the Decade Ahead. I will tell you this, it is the most important book that I have ever written, Maury, because it's the only book that I've ever written, Maury, but it was written with a lot of other people involved. But it's an opportunity to really think forward here. Let me go to the next chart, if you will, and I want to cover a couple of things. In the forward, I wrote something that I want to ask you to reflect on. It says this: the book is about looking forward. It's about the future and the decade ahead and how that decade will influence you and me and our families, this country, and even the greater globe. It's a simple premise. This decade, now through the end of 2029, may be the most consequential decade of our lives. Think about that. The most consequential decade of our lives. It's off to a pretty profound start, and it goes against some other decades that are very powerful out there. If you'll go to the next view here, if you think back again about powerful decades in the past, some of us have lived some of these, some of us have lived more than others of these. But if you go back even to thinking about the Roaring 20s, which I did some research on, it was fascinating to look at the whole idea of sort of mass production, of first wave feminism, of the whole issue of music, of crazy stunts out there. Some people called it the age of permanent prosperity. And it was until 1929 when the stock market crashed. Then we get into the next profound decade, which is the 1940s, World War II. Tom Brokaw, of course, called it the greatest generation. And I have a picture of a veteran down there, and I want to just ask you again to resonate about this quote from that person. She says this: we thought it was necessary. We thought it was exciting. We thought it was our day. And it was a matter of times when everybody thought the world was good and we had to get this terrible war over with. We did what we thought was right. I think we're better people to have at least made the effort. It's a powerful statement. By the way, that's my mother, Barbara Griffen, who was a wave in the Navy in World War II, who in New York City in secret rooms worked on decoding enemy messages. That was her contribution. And you never wanted to take her on in a Scrabble game. I'll just leave it at that. The next decade that was really powerful was Vietnam in the 1960s there. And it's the first one that I really experienced. And it was very, very powerful there. If you think about John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King and all that happened there. Wavy Gravy, who was a hippie and a social activist and kind of a peacenik, famously said, if you can remember the 60s, then you probably weren't there. And some of you know what I mean by that. So then I want to take you to a really interesting decade, which was the 2000s. And it was sort of punctuated by the 9/11 attack, of course, at the start. And yet Time magazine in 2009, in their cover in December, said it was really the decade from hell. And they said this: it was the American dream that was about to dim, bookended by 9/11 at the start and a financial wipeout at the end. The first 10 years of this century will likely go down as the most dispiriting and disillusioning decade Americans have lived through in the post-World War II era. Okay, and now it brings us to the 2020s. This decade, 2020 through 2029, that, of course, again, COVID-19, the start of 2020, and then Trump v. Biden, round one, perhaps. And again, the implications of that. So a really powerful set of decades. So Maury, next one here, I just want to cover a couple of things here. In the book here, we cover a number of really key chapters here, and our speakers have just talked about so many of them: the technology and work and future of media, education, lifestyle. And in each of these, what we brought together were 34 to 50 people to simultaneously talk about topics were quite emotional from that standpoint. American lifestyle and the American dream, resetting the mechanism in terms of this year, what it meant, and also looking at surveying a number of people there. I called it Surveying USA, which was co-authored by Maury. So my thanks for that as well. Let me go to an example here of some of the things that we did here, the future of technology. In each of the chapters, we conclude with 5 foresights that are based upon the insights and the overall session dialogue of our thought leaders. And so here's just one of 5 of just one of 12 chapters. And it said this about the future of technology: inherently good, but potentially dangerous. Most of us see technology as inherently good. We value all that it's done for our lifestyle, our economy, our ability to connect, medical advancements, and for the information and knowledge access it gives us. We all relate to that, right? But we see a dark shadow at times: disinformation, a digital divide that can be leveraged politically, weaponizing of information, military technologies without fail-safes, bad actors that want to breach sensitive info and infrastructure operations. This caution will continue in the decade, and that should make the decade better relative to technology. So put the brakes on a little bit, be careful with it. We value it, but we understand both sides of it. So just a couple other final points here. In our surveying that we did, we asked Americans to look at, and this was conducted in February of this year, to look at 15 issues that might influence their optimism for the decade, but also understand the likelihood of those to occur. And if I can direct your attention to the top right there, these are things that are pretty influential to my optimism and more likely to occur. And some pretty good things out there: successful rollout of COVID vaccine, improving healthcare access, a strong economy, restoring America's leadership role, addressing domestic terrorism, and investing in infrastructure. But look at the lower left quadrant. These are things that people said are very likely to occur, but they're pretty important. Bipartisan politics, whether or not we get younger leadership involved, progress on climate change, education reform, gun violence, advancing social equality, I should say. And that's the gap that we've got to close in the decade ahead. Those are the things that we must work on, you and I, to do that. So I want to go into just a last visual here to set a point here, second last, I should say, which is, despite all of that in terms of the work to do, the surveying says that 60% of Americans are optimistic in the decade ahead, despite all of that. Why is that? It's because they've been through a lot, that Americans are inherently optimistic, that they see good things happen, new access, new potential for equality out there, things that, again, that we might attack that we haven't had a chance to do in a long time. And that makes us think that despite all that's happened, perhaps we can get through this and value things in a way that we had never valued before. So I'll leave you with just reconsidering the journey ahead here, because it's a few kind of final thoughts that I wanted to ask you to think about here. And the first is, you can live anywhere. Think about that implication. You can live anywhere that you want to, any community. You can work from where you want for the most part there. That just means now that you can make different choices about where you are and how you want to be. Secondly, work with a purpose. This idea now of a strong economy coming up, there's going to be a lot of people that want you. And the question is, who will you work for in the next decade? Where will you spend your professional time? Will it be with an organization that really has value, has a purpose, that wants to make a dent in the universe out there from that standpoint? Thirdly, rethink your lifestyle. And this is probably one of the most profound things that we've all felt in 2020 and 2021. It was a great reawakening for us about what matters to us, about open space, about re-engaging with people, about health and fitness and wellness, and why social interaction is so important, as many of our speakers today have really so well said from that standpoint. Fourth, take a stand on what matters. Look, this is a crucial decade out there. You need to be involved. You need to be a part of the dialogue, social discourse, civil discourse. Be a volunteer. Do something, but be informed and take a stand on matters. But listen and respect the other side. That's how we'll get through it. And then finally, and lastly here, be fueled by optimism. And I want to just read the last part of this here, and just in terms of what our final point was. It's a theme throughout the book. I'm not talking about cheerleading. I'm not talking about a Pollyanna view, but to approach the decade with a sense of what can be done, what the opportunities are, not why the road is so difficult. The car goes where the driver's eyes go. Optimism is a decision. You see different doors. Optimism becomes the pass key. Besides, it's a heck of a lot less stressful. So I'm going to leave you with that. And my thanks to the Heart and Mind team. And I hope you have an opportunity to read the book. I know they're making that offer. And what I hope is it really sparks dialogue and discussion and reflection about the decade ahead and why it may be the most consequential in our lives. Maury, thanks to you. And thanks for everybody for hanging in there. I really value it.
Thank you. Thank everybody for joining us. We debated whether we would just say this is a 90-minute session, but I will be fully transparent. I fear I would have scared a lot of you off by saying that. So I'm glad that we were able to continue with the dialogue. If you didn't see the link, it's in there now again. We want to give you a copy of this book. We'll be posting stuff. Meredith on our team, Mary, you've got a lot to work with, Mary, in terms of blog posts on here. We've got a lot of content. Thank you so much. Thank you for quite literally everyone who shared here and stayed with us to this, for bringing your heart and mind to this dialogue. Thank you for being good humans that are just trying to do good things. And thank you, Doug, for that inspiration to try to carry that optimism moving forward. Happy holidays. Onward we go. Everybody take care. We'll see you next time on the new year.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.